Thank you all for joining this session. So, title of the session you see pattern recognition and signal processing for biomedical and biometric applications. So, basically, I'll be focusing many more biomedical signals, their processing, feature extraction, and some of the applications. You see, our objective here is to discuss more on how these biosignals can be easily used for different purposes. Biosignals. Here my brief biography. So, my day job is I'm professor in the Department of IEEE UX, and also I'm serving different IEEE organizations. And one important role here in Signal Processing Society, I'm the Vice Chair for IEEE Bangladesh Section Signal Processing Chapter. So I'm also involved with EMBS, Engineering in Medicine and Biology Society, and some other societies like PES, Power Energy Society, Industrial Application Societies, and many other societies. So, what I will be discussing today, different biosignals, as I say. Some of them are one-dimensional signals, just like time versus variation of signal. Some of them are two-dimensional signals, image. And even some signals are three-dimensional signal like MRI. So you can have the spatial three-dimensional XYZ along with the time and variation of time with respect to time and spatial variations you can see in MRI. So first of all, I want to make you very clear about the pattern recognition. Whatever task in pattern recognition or machine learning you have to do, the fundamentals are very same. In a real life, you have to have some sort of sensors. For example, you have to collect the data. For example, your muscle signal, your brain signal, you need a sensor. For brain signal, you have to connect the sensor here. Muscle signal, you can connect here. So, why these biosignals are very popular nowadays? You should remember the main reason because of the very low cost sensors nowadays are available. Very low cost. I should say within the last 10 years, many sensors, their prices are now 1/10 only. So these sensors like flex sensors, for muscle sensors, needle EMG, instead of needle EMG, needle means you have to impede things, and that we can use surface EMG, surface muscle signal accord. So these type of sensors are now more available. So today's lecture we are not considering these sensors. Once sensor will give you data. So this is a conversion from natural signal to your required electrical signal. Mostly different types of pressure variation, temperature variation, these type of mechanical variation, you have to collect corresponding electrical variation. For example, cardiac signals, ECG, electrocardiogram, is the representation of electrical activity of our heart. Brain signal is the representation of brain activity, neural activity of your brain. So you need to collect that sensor. Sensors will provide you equivalent electrical signal. So today, please feel free to ask me any questions from the very beginning. That's why I'm telling all fundamental things. So that part, if you want to make any sort of project, you have to at first have knowledge on sensors. Sensors you can buy from the market. They have their own numbers. So if you use the sensors, yes, your life will be easier. That means you are getting electrical signal. Now, from my perspective, I'll be more focusing on that particular electrical signal. Fine. you have obtained your brain signal. Next, what's your objective? You have to tell whether you have any disease or not, whether you're mad or not, something like that. Brain signal. Whether, okay, you look very fit, especially for the players. In the morning when they want to play, most of the players in the morning, they should be very fit before joining to their today's game. But they have to pass the fitness. Every player, they have to pass the fitness for the international game. So in that case, many cases, you may just be present. You may appear very fit, but your muscles may not working properly. Your brain may not functioning properly. So all we are doing, I am walking, I am writing, you know what is going on inside? We call it neuromuscular activities. You look very fit, your muscles are very good, but your neurons may not properly functioning. Then sometimes you will see a very young man looking very fit, he cannot move the hand. Why? He doesn't have the problem with the muscle. He has the problem with the neurons. His neurons are not working properly. That means neurosignals are not transmitted properly in his hand. How to understand that? Who will tell us that neural signals are working properly or not working properly? Then your brain signal can be one source. Your muscle signals may be a good source. So that's why you have to understand. So in that case, those players, if you use those neuromuscular signals, you can collect them and then you can easily tell them, okay, you are fit or not fit. Not necessarily he has to run the whole field one time or two times. It's not the only job. Even in some sort of lab test, you can do that. So what I'm telling, once you have the sensor, you have the electrical signal at your hand. I said your life is easy. Yes, first task is done, but most of the cases, electrical signals are very noisy. Do you know why? Why these sensors, whatever they will be providing you, is very noisy? Or what problems you may have with those signals? What problems you may have? Sensors, by a very good sensor, you acquire some sort of signal, as I said, muscle signal, brain signal, heart signals. What problems still you can have? Can you tell any problems? Huh? Motion artifacts, very good. I mean, it's quite natural. What is taking eye blinking, or you may move. So on your signal, you may have some motion artifacts. Any more? Noise from the power source. Exactly, noise from the power source. No matter which type of device you are using, that 50 Hz is always there, and it's harmonic. Yes, he's one step ahead. So sensor, generally what I said about the sensor, mechanical to electrical, fine. But electrical signal still is kind of continuous time signal. What he's telling, continuous to discrete. Then if it is discrete, then you need some sort of quantization. So you may have some quantization noise while transmitting. I will show you, because many of the biosignals you acquire here, but you process there. Doctor is there. So if you have to transmit, so quantization noise is also there. Very good. So just imagine these sort of noises are there. So many more, environmental noises are also there. And especially for particular signals like ECG, baseline wonders, and what you say, datify, different noises are there. On top of that, for example, I am talking, I am moving. All these noises are there, 50 years, whatever you say. One major problem is these biosignals are very weak signals. In comparison to my voice, if I say this is magnitude is 100, their magnitude sometimes is 0.00001, 10 to the power minus 6, 10 to the power minus 7. You understand the problem? So it's not very easy. If you compare with the voice processing and my cardiac signal processing, it's very difficult. You can understand why the magnitude is very low. You can understand by yourself. Think why the magnitude is very low. For example, in case of your brain signal, why the brain signal magnitude is very low? Why? Can you tell me? From where you will be occurring your brain signal? From skull. Some organs actually producing the signal. For brain signal, which is actually producing the signal? Neurons, where are they located? Brain, not in the skull. Now you imagine how thick is the skull. Can you reach to your brain? Can you reach to your heart? Almost every cases you cannot reach there. As far as you cannot reach there, so a long buffer, you can think about the skull. So these bar signals are very weak. So whatever regular signal processing approach for noise removal or other environmental noise or 50 Hz artifact, one main problem is this type of very weak signal handling is very, very difficult. But when you are acquiring, environment is same. I am talking, the environment is same. You are acquiring your biosignal, environment is same. So environmental noise strength is same. Only the source noise is very low, source power is very low. So you have to face a great challenge. That's called pre-processing. You see the pre-processing. So you need a very strong pre-processing step where you have to remove all these types of noises. As long as you can remove the noises, one main problem like, okay, if you try to boost the signal, noises will also be boosted. So it's not very easy. So that's an important part where signal processing can play an important role. Next, you have your signal at your hand. Let's see. I want to differentiate whether I have a mental disease or not from the brain signal. I want to differentiate whether I am very tired, fatigued or not from brain signal. So what happens? You record my brain signal. Let's see, you use 1000 samples per second sampling frequency, 1 kilohertz, 1000 samples per second. One sample may be 16 bits at least, 64 bits. So if you record my 10 minutes, 5 minutes brain signal, you can imagine 1000 samples per second. I'm talking about 10 minutes, 1000 samples, each sample 64 bits. Can you imagine the volume of your data you are creating? So now you are giving me, okay, this is your brain data, and this is another person's brain data. So this is another person's brain data. So you give me, I don't know, for example, some of them are really fatigued or tired people, some of them are not tired people. You ask me to differentiate. So if I now use the whole data, it's very difficult. Even 1 second, 2 second data is huge, 1000 samples per second, huge number of bits. In that case, I didn't say about the number of channels. This EEG, the person will ask you, there are 64 channels, which data you want? Similar 64 channels. I didn't say about the images. So in many cases like MRI, CT images, lung cancer images. So images, you understand the volume of the data. So that's why it's not a good idea if you directly use the whole data for differentiating two people. If I say, okay, these people, they have a lot of information. These people, they have a lot of information. Differentiate them. You cannot differentiate. How? Their age, height, weight, a lot of information I can give you. I cannot differentiate. But if I give you one information, okay, the average age here is, let's say 25, average age here is 20. Let's say one value. Okay, now you can differentiate. Okay, if these people are, let's say, healthy, these people are weak. So you can have one parameter. Oh, healthy people, their average in this perspective age is 20, 25. So you have one parameter, easily you can differentiate. So next person, whoever will be coming, what is your age? If it is 18, 19, you say, okay, you are healthy. If your age is 30, 40, you are not healthy. Because you have a single parameter. So this single parameter extraction, we call it feature extraction. You understand? So given data is always bulky, huge data. If you want to differentiate two class with a large number of data, is sometimes impossible. You have to drop down, you have to extract suitable feature that can easily differentiate two classes. That's the state feature extraction. So once you have the feature extracted, then your job is to classify A class and B class. Now, how can I differentiate two classes? As I said, healthy people, for this purpose, okay, their age range is like 20. Not healthy, their age range is say 30. At least they have one disease. 30 and above, 20 and below, they don't have any disease. But this parameter I said to you, 20 and 30, I am sure that you will not agree with it. Many people who are 35, they don't have any disease. Many children, they are 10, 12, they have a disease. That means you will see a lot of overlap. There is no clear demarcation like this. Whoever is coming, telling his age, 18. His age, 32. 18, coming and telling, I have no disease. 30, coming and telling, I have a disease. This is totally impossible. So it's not very easy that one feature you extract and then differentiate two class, impossible. You may have to look for two features, three features. Then you can come with a decision. No, not only that, you have to consider the past history, family history, many other country of origin, different issues. In that case, you understand the number of features will increase. And then I'll tell you more about that. Once you have a number of features, and then if you again try to demarcation, if you try to demark two features by a single value, not necessarily it is always possible. One good approach there, what we call machine learning, one approach I have told you. Your job is to find two different classes. One approach, you take the data, you have a threshold, you just divide. Below threshold this class, below threshold this class. Yes, you can increase the number of features. For each feature, you have a threshold. Feature number 1, threshold is 5. So you call it in this way. If feature 1 is less than 5, feature 2 is less than 20, feature 3 is less, you can do that. This system, what I am telling you, this was logical operations. This was artificial intelligence. Yeah, fine, you have this. It was long back available, even 1950, 60, 70, it was very popular. Later on, people were thinking, no, this is not a good idea. Every time I give a threshold, and adding conditions. So, okay, fine. If I want to classify this room, okay, 5 features are good. The whole country, maybe I need 500 features, 600 features. Then what to do? Then people are thinking, why don't we just rely on machine and train the machine in a way that machine will learn a lot, then can take decision. That is called machine learning. How I will teach machine? I'll bring one guy, so label him, okay, he is a diseased person. His features are, first feature value 5, second feature value 7, third feature value 10. I will tell the machine, bring the second person, level, disease, first feature value this, second feature value this. Bring a third person, oh no, this is not disease, level, healthy, first feature value, second feature value. In this way, if you give thousands of samples, millions of samples, so the machine will learn like you. Your brain is actually learning in this way. Your brain can differentiate many people in very simple way. So that is called machine learning. That means you have to teach machine. Two things you have to give to machine. The particular level, healthy or not healthy, that is called class level, and corresponding features. Level and features. So machine learning is based on this fact. To learn a machine, to teach a machine, we call it teaching. More sophisticated name is called training. So this is the main job of machine. You have to train the machine. So if you train the machine, if you have your teacher to train, that is called a teacher, that teacher will tell this is class 1, values are this. Class 2, values are this. So if you go in this approach, this is called supervised learning. Somebody is there to teach. Who is your teacher? Who is the supervisor? So supervised machine learning. It is also possible for machine. Without being trained, it can, there are some algorithms, it can differentiate. But not necessarily it can say if you have particular objectives, it will fail sometimes. It can just differentiate two classes. So that is called unsupervised if you don't have any label. So this is the task I'm telling here. You have to have then a big number of templates, teachers or trainers. So previously it will be trained, and in the real life, somebody will come, you can do the testing and take the decision. So this is the fundamental things. Sensors, data collected. So once you have the data, you need some sort of signal processing to remove noises and those things. Once you remove, so pre-processed data, you have to extract features. And once you have a very clean data and then pre-processed, then extracted features at your hand, you label them, train the machine, and you are ready. So next person come, you can tell, you can classify. This is the whole machine learning process. So where the recent trend is, this feature extraction, last 30 years people were more interested on this. Why? I said feature extraction is important. You remember I said the data, 1000 samples per second, the data, the volume was very large. Image, the volume was very large. So last 20, 30 years, people were very much interested with this feature extraction. Why? Data was very large. If data is very large, what is your problem? Computation. One problem, computation. But now, with the passage of time, very fast machines are available. We call GPU. They can process very fast. As a result, I should say last 5 years, people, they now keep this problem aside. No, I don't have any problem. Because if you compare your laptop with a very high configuration GPU-based machine, that machine is 1,000 times faster than your laptop. Am I right? At least 1,000 times. At least. So people are now very happy. So now they are saying, no, I don't want to extract any features. Machine will extract features. Only I will teach machine how to extract features. That is called the next learning process. Previously, I was giving machine the features. And now we are telling, no. Machine, you have to find which features are good and you find it. You have to learn it. So previously, we were helping. But now, machine itself is performing that learning process. What we call now deep learning process. Deep learning. So here, you don't need basically to extract any features. Machine will go to your signal. Machine will look very closely to your signal and decide something. Do some signal processing operation and extract features. Move to the next step. Do something and extract some features. And compare the convergence of your features. So basically, the whole approach is not new. It was long before invented during 50s. That time, this process, the name is some sort of neural network, because all those, whatever you are giving, they were thinking this is some nodes. So they were processing some weight values for the nodes, moving feed forward or backward, and finding a very suitable objective function for your data and become ready with a level. Yes.
Unsupervised learning and deep learning, because machine doing all the learning in unsupervised learning, it is labeling all the things. And deep learning is similar to it. So may I know the difference between deep learning and unsupervised learning?
See, deep learning and unsupervised learning. First of all, I'll say that for all of you, I didn't stress on unsupervised because mostly you will be going supervised. So do you have the clear idea about unsupervised and supervised? Because you have to say, I appreciate. Unsupervised and supervised, main difference is, for unsupervised, they don't have any teacher. They have the data, they may have teachers, but is this class 1 or class 2? Nobody is there to say. This is unsupervised. You understand? Unsupervised, they don't have labeling. They don't have teacher. They don't need to train. Who will train? What will train? Nothing to train. That is unsupervised. So I think unsupervised, then how to differentiate? It's just like, okay, he is wearing suits, bring this one, he is wearing suits, okay, this one side. Machine will try to find out some similar features, group them together. Oh, remaining them, we do go there. Oh, now decide, okay, who are taller, okay, you use it. So this way, machine will one by one, find some groups. At last, try to separate the two class separation, and he will give you, okay, this is my cluster 1, this is my cluster 2. So this is man, this is cow, even he cannot say that. Because you didn't label. You didn't label anything. It is possible. Machine will just give you 2 classes. You understand? But supervised can tell this is man, this is cow. Because you teach him this is man, man has these properties. This is cow, it has these properties. So unsupervised, no level. Is this clear? Supervised, you must have to tell machine this is level 1, level 2. Now your question is, supervised, normal methods. I didn't say the name of the methods because it's a very starting point. There are many methods. I should not say at the very beginning. Many methods, support vector machine, k-nearest neighborhood, a lot of different methods. And he rightly addressed the question, what is then deep learning? What extra you are doing? That's why I try my best to teach you in a different way. While you are in normal learning, normal teaching, you are extracting features. Nobody can tell me normal learning generally they did features. Why? Huge data, only the main problem. So huge data, you extract features. Features along with class level. This is man, this is cow. Features, level, gives machine. Machine is now trained, do the classification. Deep learning, main difference, or easy to understand difference, you don't have to worry about the features. Machine will go inside the data and we call it nodes, different nodes of the data, points of the data, points of interest. Give the weights. Oh, this is less weight. Just remove it. These are very nice for me to classify. So machine will pick up, machine will, as I say, nice. How machine will understand nice? He will do some signal processing. For example, convolution. For example, optimization of some functions with the use of some weights. Setting up some objective function and minimizing the cost function. So machine will do some sort of small processing intensively, and machine will throw out some information, keep some information for the next stage, again doing something, maybe going back and forth, and finding out a very clear set of information from the given direct data. That means no feature extractions are there, but label is there. You said that this is man, this is cow. So you understand the difference? So this is called deep learning. That means no teacher, at least teacher is there, no feature extraction and system. So machine itself will extract the features and we learn. And so why it is called deep? This is actually learning. As I said, node wise, feed forward, backward. It was previously named as artificial neural network algorithm. Previously, ANN, first time. 50s, 60s, it was there. Later, it was almost stopped because of this high computation. Because some other algorithms came at that time, SVM and those stuff. So this artificial neural network, it was almost, people were not interested to be using, but now, last 5 years, you will see the number of papers jumped 1,000 times now. Everybody is relying on machine and asking machine to learn. That is called, it was called ANN, artificial neural network, and it is called deep neural network, DNN. And CNN is nothing but a version of DNN. As I said, how you learn, you have to do something. In case of CNN, convolution neural network, they do the convolution. Why? Because this is the mother process, I should say, convolution. Because input A will produce output B. If the system is H, it is A convolution H. So that's why. Always my objective is to bring out something better. So in convolution neural network, I actually find out some best possible system that can provide me a very good output for the next step. Again process, bring the next stage. Again process, bring the next stage. If you have a lot of stages, that means from last point to first point, you can say it's a deep neural network. So a lot of stages, deeperly you are investigating. So is this clear about the pattern recognition? The fundamental classification. So that's my main, actually, if you understand that, at this moment, you don't need to understand every operations what I will be telling. But my objective is to introduce you different signals. So, as I said, data acquisition, pre-processing, feature extraction. So for feature extraction, sometimes you'll see decomposition, segmentation, region extraction. These are common terms I will describe with you later on. And finally, decision making. These are the steps. So, just I like to discuss it in this way. When you are extracting features, one is holistic approach. Another one is segmented approach. What is holistic approach? I give you my face, another person's face, and I told to differentiate them. You use the whole face. On whole face, you do some averaging. So mean color. Another person, mean pixel intensity. This is holistic. Sometimes it is fine, very fast. You can get a very good result, differentiating two different ethnicity countries. But you can also do, oh no, I don't want to, if I want to differentiate them, why should I take the whole face? Why don't I just take the eyes or lips? Because that part actually differentiating these two people very much. Because country-wise, they all look very same. For example, for you, the Chinese people may be looking the same. All are same. So how to differentiate? No, maybe I can take their eyes. Maybe something inside the eye. So that is called region of interest. So you'll see that these two approaches will be coming in my talk. Holistic and segmented approach. Now, as I said, I'll be trying to introduce you different biosignals. First one is muscle signals. As I said, if you are tired or not, how to understand? So I can use some leads and, for example, you can see, you can extract some leads and you can say. So you can also give some precaution. This picture is very old. Nowadays, even under the watch, you can have some sensors. And that watch can sense. Or you can tell people, okay, it will pain here, touch it, touch it. Sensors are right there. Immediately, that sensor can give you some sort of information. Oh, you are healthy, you are not healthy, like this. It will give more better information if you teach that watch. How? Because your muscle pattern and my muscle pattern may not be same. So it is always recommended right after buying that, you touch a lot of times and train it. So there are some train options. Start training. Touch 1 second each part, it will learn. You understand? So this industry is now mainly investing a lot of money targeting cell phones and this smartwatch. They are actually connected. Cell phones and smartwatch. So 2017 last part, I went to California. There was a very big conference where all those big cell phone companies were there in the October. So what they were telling, these cell phone companies, all they are dreaming that most of the biosignals they can acquire from the back side of the cell phone. Because if you open up your back side of the cell phones, at least few millimeter gap and a plastic body. I have seen many people, their cell phone is very thick. Why? They are using a different case. I think most of you are using a case. At least I use a casing. So that is used for protection purpose. So they are telling that particular area of the cell phone backside, whole backside will be using lot of sensors. So these skin sensors, so heart, different types of sensors for heart, so brain sensors, different types of sensors they will be using. So as far as different sensors they'll be using, so the life will be very easier. You can acquire your own data and can test what is going on. At least preliminary test. At least telling go to the doctor. At least. Because many pains you have, sometimes elder people, they don't go to the doctor, at the end they die. They die, simple die. Because they couldn't understand at the time. So that's why it's getting popularity, because if you invent a very nice device, very small, handy, nice device, that can do the same job, nobody will buy. I'm telling you. Nobody will buy. If you say, my cell phone has cardiac diagnosis facility, people will buy that phone. It's not very easy to change the habit. At this moment, I'm telling you. But surely you can say, okay, whatever cell phone you have, it is $200. At $10, you'll get the facility. You can check your heart. People will buy $210. 5% increase. Everybody will buy that. So that's the area where money is invested actually. So this muscle signal. So now I should say, like, I mean, many of you may not understand the algorithm, but please read it later. But signal processing is not very difficult. And as far as MATLAB is there, the codes are there. But I appreciate you learn the algorithm, but actually the physical interpretation of that particular algorithm. So my objective is now from given muscle signal, you have to say good health or bad health. Because there are some muscle diseases like ALS or something. So right after starting, within a month, the patient will die. There are no treatments for those cases. So it's not very easy to diagnose them. So that's why these are some pictures you can see for normal EMG data, ALS, and myopathy subject. So just for your understanding, you just see the top one. You just see the bottom one. By naked eye, you can say it's abnormal. You see, it's abnormal. You understand? This behavior with respect to this is the standard one. This is abnormal. At the middle, I have also incorporated another one. This is also abnormal. That's the challenge. That's the challenge. If it was like this, the first class, and this is the class 2, class 1, your job was very easy. If I say now, differentiate this with this. Those who are not very expert, just think and tell me, how can I differentiate this signal and this signal? What algorithm I can use? What? Correlation between what? I say that I have two classes. One class is like that. So this is person 1 signal, another signal, another signal. I can have 1000 signal, all are very similar to like this. Class 1. And class 2, all are like this. How can I differentiate those two classes? What? From the naked eye, major differences are there. Yes. Frequency. Frequency. You can see frequency. The lower on frequency is higher. Higher frequency components are there. You understand? So this is signal processing. You have the signal. You do some sort of Fourier transform. In MATLAB, you just give it. It will tell you the frequency. So if you do the Fourier transform, what will happen to the lower case? Higher frequency components will be a lot of higher frequency components. For the upper one, no higher frequency components. So you can select one feature. So let's see from 100 to 300 frequency concentration for the class 1 and class 2. Easily you can get some threshold. For class 1, maybe 1 or 2. For class 2, the average frequency concentration may be 100 or 1000. You understand? But that's why I also incorporate the middle one. This is also abnormal. Life is not very easy that easily you can differentiate two cases. So whenever your signal is very complex, whenever your signal looking very complex, why I am telling complex? If you look at here, it's not like a simple sine wave. It has a lot of data inside. One thing I want to recommend you, whenever your signal looks very complex, decompose it. Decompose it. What does it mean? That means how I will tell, you decompose the signal, for example, into two components. High frequency content components and low frequency content component. We can do that. How? How can I divide a signal into high frequency component content and low frequency? Using filter. Very good. Filter. One filter will pass all high frequency, one filter will low frequency. Clear? This is actually nothing but the fundamental of wavelet transform. Wavelet transform. Only the difference is in wavelet transform, you are considering, okay, this signal, it has very high frequency, I use a filter. But just think, the signal which has a very high frequency, if you give me a time slot like this, here you can see maybe 20 cycles are there. For here, maybe only one cycle. So I ask you to take one portion, one signal 20 times, another signal 1 time. Both of them you are now doing short-term Fourier transform for the duration of that 1 second. One has a lot of cycles, one has only 1 cycle. You are not actually doing the proper judgment to them. The signal which has 20 cycles, you should look very close to that cycle, because your objective is to find out the frequency, hertz, cycle per second. So one guy, it is very relaxed, fine, you get 1 cycle, but the other one is 20 cycles. So that's why if you consider the lower one, your time resolution has to increase, time resolution. That means you have to densely look at that. Short-term Fourier transform means you have to have a short duration and then Fourier transform. That means we have to look close to that point. That is called windowing. So wavelet transform is such a transform where you are getting the advantage of both. Previously you said the filter, fine. That didn't take this consideration. So if you do the wavelet transform, it will provide you the advantage of time resolution as well as frequency resolution. So for wavelet transform, for the lower part, it will go small for window and do the frequency transform and tell you that. You got the difference? So that is wavelet transform. So if you do the wavelet transform, ultimately what you are getting some high frequency content signals, low frequency content signals. Instead of filter bank, instead of the two filters, as I said, you have this luxury. That means you can increase the time resolution. If you do that, this is the discrete wavelet transform. This equation you will not understand at this moment. I don't want to teach you this. But what you get, you can do this type of decomposition, not into two. Once you have this, let's see, 1 to 1000. Divide them 1 to 500, 500 to 1000. Oh no, this 1 to 500 is still very complex. Divide it 1 to 250, 250 to 500. 1 to 250 is not good. 1 to 125, 125 to 250. So this way we can get components, DWT components. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 components. So that was a good paper by us, IEEE transaction on biomedical circuit system. So where we showed that if you decompose your muscle signals using this wavelet transform into small components, what will happen? You will get a lot of different components, wavelet components. We call it dB. So dB 1, 2, 3. That I don't want to go detail. So these different components you obtain. Instead of handling the original signal, now you will extract features from this decomposed signal. Is this okay? Previously, it did not decompose one complex signal. Now, you extract features from this decomposed signal. Like these are the decomposed signals. You see, these are the decomposed signals. Well, decomposed. So far it is math. In MATLAB, you just write DWT finish and just give in how many levels you want, one line. Just DWT, that is the code. Now, what I like, how can I relate with the power signals? What advantage actually you are getting by doing this? This muscle signal, how it is originated, you know? We call it neuromuscular signals. Motor neurons, you know, your finger you are moving. How? Your brain is transmitting a signal. Brain is transmitting a signal. There are transmitters. So these transmitters are not, wireless transmitters. These are some chemicals, actually chemicals. From here, it will come here, okay? So these transmitters, sometimes we say you are dull. That means you are writing very slowly. That means their neuron firing is slow. I am dictating, I am sure if I now dictate and ask you to write, some people will write very fast, some cannot. All of you understand your own language, mother tongue. So if I say, I am 100% sure, not all of you can finish at the same time. And if I say more and more sentences, some of you, one sentence, what is it? But some of you can write fast. Why? This is called neural firing rate. And there are different other factors, I don't want to bring it at this moment. So if you understand that this firing rate, so neural firing rate, this is called motor unit action potential. It's a complicated word for you, but what is action potential? That means you are getting some sort of biosignal from a cell. That is a potential. If it is not a potential, how can you watch in oscilloscope or anywhere? It's a potential. It's a signal, and then it has a potential. So this neural firing, so every neural firing actually for bringing some potential, action potential, they call it action potential. Something like millivolt range. For basal signal, this is like 40 millivolt or something, millivoltage, action potential. This action potential is actually causing you, if I say, is it a generator action or motor action? While you are writing? Motor action. Why? Like the fan is rotating. Potential is there and you are writing. You are moving your hand. That's the name motor unit action potential. Why unit? Each firing will produce 1 unit. Next firing, 1 unit. When you look at your muscle signal, Actually, they are potentials, action potentials. They are the sum of a lot of action potentials. Because it is not one, this is not 10, this is not 100, there are millions of neurons fire at the same time. So your muscle signals are composition of several motor unit action potentials. You understand? So what happens? They are directional also. So some is giving directions here, some is giving directions here. So maybe combined what is going on, you don't understand. So EMG signal is actually composition of all those action potentials. So what is our objective? If I can get unit action potentials, then I can have the best result actually. What is going on your brain? So that's why when you decompose your signal, actually there is a possibility to getting those motor unit action potentials. This is not my word. It is already in McGill University. First in 2008, they have proven that motor unit action potential and the decomposed signal, they have a very good relationship. Very good relationship. But the problem is how many times I will decompose, with the help of which type of decomposition I will use, that is still under debate. Some people they said, okay, some wavelet based decomposition is good. Some people are telling, no, it's not the one. They call it empirical mode decomposition, EMD, a very popular domain nowadays. EMD. Another one is variational mode decomposition, VMD. The basic difference with the wavelet is they are mainly concerned with the pattern, not necessarily with the frequency. You understand the difference? If people ask you what is the difference between EMD and DWT, in one word, DWT is still time frequency decomposition. EMD, no, it is based on pattern. So they give you some sort of mother pattern and ask you to decompose looking at those patterns. I give you one pattern, you try to match, decompose and match, oh, this is one part, finished. Second pattern, third pattern, fourth pattern like this. So, in brief, my conclusion is the signal is very complex, try to decompose it. How? As I said, I just have given you two examples, wavelet transform, DWT, and different types of mode decompose. Mode, pattern-based decomposition. So what is the benefit in terms of biomedical signal? Actually, you are going to the origin of that biomedical signal. Because biosignals are compositions of different unit potentials. Is it clear why we will go for decomposition? In that paper, we have shown that if you decompose, then feature extract, you get very, very good results rather than using directly. So that was the contribution for that particular paper. These are some results. If you check my website, you'll get all those papers. So you can understand the differences of two classes. Actually, at that paper, we differentiate healthy people and those diseased people from muscle signals. After this, any question? You understand? Muscle signals. Where are the applications of muscle signals? As I said, for disease detection as well as whether you are fit or not, health fitness, especially for the players, this is a very good way to determine. So next we have to see EEG. The problem is still there. You see a lot of leads are there. It's not very easy to acquire your brain signal. Why? You cannot touch it. If you can touch it, there are some methods that is invasive. You will not allow, but some people are ready to give you permission to touch the brain if they are severely ill. Inside the brain, they use some implants, circuits. There is no way for them. They allow, okay, use some implants because they are severely suffering mental diseases, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, okay, seizure. A lot of mental diseases are there. So in that case, they are ready. Okay, no. Seizure means, you know seizure? In case of seizure, you'll be for few seconds you'll be mad. You'll be acting like a mad. In rural areas, people say these are mad. So they are, not human at this moment. So that is seizure. So in those cases, for seizure, so what the treatment we do, we beat the person. Because he's not human, so beat and bring him back as a human being. Huh? So I don't know whether that will work or not. If you beat brutally, he may die. So it could not be a good way to treat a patient like seizure. Actually, what is the problem? Even today, there is no treatment. So beating could be nothing. So generally, seizure will be over within sometimes 2 seconds, 20 seconds, 1 minute or 2 minutes. So you can beat 2 minutes, finish. Ultimately, it will be over. It's not the case. Actually, there is no treatment for seizure. Only the treatment, you can tell the people that after 10 minutes, you will have a high chance of this seizure. So please stay at home or at rest. Because if you are driving, at that moment, if seizure is coming, you can understand what will happen. Surely, there will be a severe accident. You understand? So that's why what is needed, we have to collect your brain signal continuously and process and say, now it's okay, now it's okay. Oh, there is a chance of seizure attack. Who will tell that? Machine will tell that. How machine will tell that? That patient's previous history of attack. You have to keep him hospital for 15-20 days and teach the machine that if seizure comes, the EEG patterns changes in this way. You may ask me why you are so much concentrating EEG, because these are mental disease. Mostly, these are not my muscle disease. These are not cardiac disease. So what is the use of cardiac signal, muscle signal? It is mental disease, so I have to collect the mental data. Finish. You understand? The collection is a problem, but once you have the collected data, so you can pre-process. So another application is sleep apnea at night. Okay? So at night, sleep apnea, sometimes, especially for senior people, this sleep apnea may occur. So if sleep apnea occurs, in that case, actually you have this nasal cavity and oral cavity. Here. From your lungs, you see, nasal cavity. So I don't understand if you can see from the back. This is very narrowed down, very narrow. This is okay. So if your nasal cavity is like this, blocked airways, at night when you are sleeping, there will be a problem of breathing. So after you have seen, I think you have seen, especially senior people, so all on a sudden they wake up and make some sounds. Okay? It's good, like if you wake up 1 or 2 times, no harm. But if it is every 5 minutes, in the daytime you will be drowsy. It's a disease. So proper sleep is needed. For every person, 6 hours sleep is needed. It's sound sleep. It's not like every 5 minutes you'll be waking up. Oh, then? No, it's not good. Okay, you need sound sleep, 6 hours. So that's why it's called sleep disorder. It's called sleep disorder. So now the question is, it is sleep disorder. I will be using some muscle signals. Okay, fine, you can use some muscle signal, fine. But in some cases, you will be waking up, but you can not necessarily just the eye is blink and like this, or not even eye blink. I think you have to understand one thing. This is the brain signal characteristics. A single person's brain signal can behave like this. From back, at least you can see, this is very high frequency. And the bottom one is very low frequency. Tell me for your brain, from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4. Which particular stage I can expect? On the top, 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one? Which one? First one. But he is sleeping almost. How can he say the first one? I don't know what is alpha. For example, I can say, so This one, alpha is, okay, actually I didn't want to utter all those names, alpha, beta, theta, delta. There are 5 stages. So if you say alpha, then it is 8 to 12 hertz. Fine, he knows. I thank for that. And basically what happens, so when you are sleeping, that means there is no activity. Okay? What type of activity I'm telling? Like I am moving my hand, I am walking. These are activities. When I'm sleeping, almost no activity. But still there are some activities when I'm sleeping. What activity? That is? Heart is pumping. He is correct. He is concerned about the heart. At least heart is pumping. Huh? Somebody has to pump the heart. Who is pumping the heart? Brain. That means that is a muscle signal. Contraction. That means your neurons are firing. That means if you say my brain is not working at that time, no, it's not true. It's working. Still working. But very less. Unlike if I just walk now, run now, is severe. So that's why even if you are sleeping, it's very less, like 1 hertz, 2 hertz, very less when you are sleeping. But when you are studying, it's very active. It's very active. Sometimes even I say it is harder than to play for some people. So playing means you are playing. That means you need a lot of firing. But it's not true. Even if you are reading, a lot of firings are there. And especially if you are trying to memorize it. So different part of brain, they do different work. That means neural firings will be huge when you are awake. So that's what I'm telling. At this moment, maybe you are not playing, you are not walking, you are not running. Also, I expect you are not sleeping. So he is correct. He is very smart. He is sitting in the middle, alpha. So neither sleeping nor playing. It's good. That means if it is the case, that means by looking at your brain signal frequency, I can classify. So like when a person is sleeping, and when this sleep apnea comes, what happens, for sleep apnea, nasal cavity shrinks. So what happens? Carbon dioxide, there is an exchange carbon dioxide oxygen in the blood. So that cannot be inhaled or exhaled. So as a result, it's a kind of problem in breathing. So for that case, what will happen? It will also be reflected in your brain signal. The problem will be there. So he was sleeping. His frequency was less than 1 hertz. All of a sudden, if this is the problem, the neuron will try to save you. And all of a sudden, neuron will try to fire more. Because otherwise, if neuron just sitting down idly, within 3 minutes or 2 minutes, you will die. Because it is shrink. Oxygen is not coming. Carbon dioxide is not going. I'm talking about your lungs and that part. But your brain is not very dull. He will do something. He will fire more and more and try to make you awake. You understand the case? That means I don't have to see your hands or your face. I just have to see your brain signal. Obviously, during the during the sleep apnea, your firings will be higher. All of a sudden, you will see that your frequency will increase. You understand? That's a very simple thing. So if you understand your biosignal mechanism, then the world is very easy. The problem is not always we have the explanation. Not all biosignals we have the exact explanation. What is my target? What is the explanation? So this sleep apnea, we have a lot of papers you can see in my website, journal papers, good journal papers last 3-4 years. So our main theme was like that. That was our paper was also accepted. We said, okay, fine. You take your brain signal. I am telling you decompose it. Because that was our proposal. Previously, nobody has done in that way. So if you decompose it, this type of high frequency behavior can easily be understood from your decomposed high frequency component. I hope you understand now. If you read the paper now, you will understand. So the idea is very simple. You have the EEG signal. Don't go for the directly to the signal feature extraction. Decompose it. Look on your high frequency components and try to classify normal and sleep apnea cases depending on those decomposition parts. That's the simple idea. So you have your signal. You have to do the feature extraction. You can decompose by band limited signals. You have said that filter can be used. So you can use this filter. So you can see different papers we have used this VMD, EMD, DWT. That's what I'm telling. Now, if you read those papers, you'll understand. I'm sure you'll understand. So different types of decomposition, and then you feature extract, and you can understand what is going on. So I'm not interested at this moment to show you all those results because we cannot complete all those things. Another thing is important from signal processing perspective, that one thing I say you have to decompose. Another thing I want to mention, if you want to use the whole signal at a time, it is bad. What I said, instead of whole signal, you decompose in frequency domain. Now I am telling, even like this, let's say this is your whole signal up to this. Also, you take small parts at a time. Instead of 1 second, why don't you take 25 milliseconds, 25 milliseconds, 25 milliseconds? Why? Because most of the biosignal changings occur very fast. As I said, neural firing rate is very high. So these firing rate patterns, if you want to understand, you have to increase the time resolution. So take a small part. I am giving you one example. You have 10 minutes data. You take the feature. What is the feature? Average value. It could be one feature, average value. But instead of that 10 minutes, you take very small, 1 second chunk. And for each chunk, you take average value. So what you will be getting? Instead of your 10-minute signal, you understand? X-axis is time, Y-axis is your signal. Instead of your 10-minute signal, now what you are getting? X-axis is still time. So 1 second or 2 second time. Y-axis is not your signal. What is your Y-axis? Average value. So this is called feature variational pattern, temporal pattern. Y-axis is not signal. Y-axis is feature. So this is called feature variational pattern. So this is a very nice transformation. I said about average. There are hundreds of features like entropy, mean, median, mode, skewness, kurtosis, thousands of features. So a very small task can provide you from time variational, from original signal, you can transform into feature variational pattern. This is called feature space. Yes. So, entropy is nothing but the content of measure of content of information. P log P. P is the probability log P. So it's a mathematics statistical term. So sometimes it is very good. As I said, my y-axis, give the example y-axis of average. Okay, forget about the average. You take the entropy as a feature. Why? Because this is the measure of information. If there is no information change, entropy is zero. Entropy is the probability of change of information. That is called entropy. Okay? That's good. So that's what I'm telling. You can see the mapping from one domain to another domain, from signal domain to transform into another feature variational domain. So nowadays, last 5 years, you see at least 10 of my papers, journal papers, all we are working on this feature variational pattern. Statistical analysis, all we are doing on this feature space rather than signal space. Why? Because, yeah, it is still signal, but I am taking very, very small chunk, and signal may have some randomness in behavior, but that type of feature, I took the feature, so sometimes they become more regular shape. Random fluctuation in signal may be avoided. That's the idea. So this is the pattern you can see with respect to frame number. So you can see that he is correct entropy variation. So the two class, apnea class, non-apnea class, easily you can see the variation is very high. But for signal, this variation, you cannot get that variation. Okay? Okay. So, like this is the one, you can say, variational pattern. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, two classes. And y-axis is different subframes. as I said, different bands, alpha, beta, gamma, different bands, alpha, beta, gamma, different bands, and this pattern of for two class, say healthy class and patient class. X-axis is, you can say time or you can say this chunk number or frame number, and y-axis is entropy. So if you take this entropy, then you can clearly see the class separation. Two class separation is very visible. Rather than if I show you the signal, you cannot distinguish the two signals of healthy and patient. Impossible. The signals look very bad. So my conclusion, you see, what I said, I want to divide into different bands or modes, DWT or EMD, different modes, and for each case, I will be taking small subframes. Then I will see this variational pattern. You understand? You can now have very nice variation, but still, you see, if you take time resolution, very small time resolutions, then still there will be a lot of samples here. At first I said that feature-based case, this lot of samples is not a good idea. Then by looking at this pattern, what you can do, you can do further modeling of this pattern. This is a pattern actually. There is a pattern. You cannot see it, but statistical modeling can be done on here. So you can see the value 1.1, 1.5, 2, 2.1 values. Now if there are 1000 values like this, and ask the machine to draw the histogram, so you will see generally the values are very close to 1.7 or something. Some values are less than 1, some values are greater than 2. So that is called histogram. You can draw with just tally count how many of them are 1.4, how many of them are 1.2, how many of them are 1.8. So this is simple histogram. From that two figures. And from this histogram, if you ask the machine, I mean, why I'm telling machine? Because many of you may not be aware of all these probability density functions. And some of you must know that. To fit the PDF, you need a histogram data. So from this histogram, you can easily plot this type of PDF, which we call Rayleigh PDF, Riccian PDF, Gaussian PDF, a lot of PDF. Then what is the advantage? There are two classes, healthy and disease. Now you see, previously you had this type of data. So by your eye you have to say, okay, one class 1.2, another class something 2. But now this PDF will give you very nice information. Okay, the class mean is like that and class variation is like that. Generally one PDF has two parameters, mean and variance. So if you fit them, then the two class will have different parameters. So now drastically the feature dimension is reduced. You understand? So we have some statistical analysis, some signal processing. So eventually it was EEG data. You divided into different bands or modes. From each band, you transform the band signal to feature variational pattern. Still you are not happy because there are a lot of frame numbers and feature variation. So you decided to still reduce the size by fitting that pattern into a probability density function. So eventually from the original signal, you are getting only two parameters, mean and variance, which is not, I mean, it's not your wish. It's coming from statistical density, probability density analysis, very strong. And then you can easily separate. That's actually my recent 2 journal papers last year published. You can see IEEE transaction, where we have shown that these diseases can be classified using this type of PDF fittings. So up to this, I think we can now take a break because next we'll be discussing more on other signals because we are one-dimensional signals maybe 10-20 minutes I'll be happy to discuss with their pattern recognition and processing. Thank you. Okay, let's start again. So I was discussing about the EEG signal. So just for few more examples, I will not explain all those things. Like also we are working on mental task classification. Which type of mental task you are doing, that classification. For example, geometrical figure rotation, mathematical multiplication, mental letter composition, like this. I mean, if you are composing any letter or you are thinking about some images, so that can also be identified from your brain signal. It's just an example, you can do that. The process is very similar. You can have the EEG signals, features, you can do that. So, as I said, I will not be discussing all those classification performance or 99% accuracy or 98. It's not a fact to discuss here. Also, we are working on another task, like one of our students, she is working on this different brain, different portions. They are actually performing different mental tasks. Different. So in that case, so which part is working on which activities? For example, your frontal lobe, voluntary control of skeletal muscles. So some part works on visual stimulus, some part works on pain, vibration, taste, temperature. So different parts of your brain, so frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal. So this is frontal, this is parietal. On the back side you have occipital. Beside your ear is a temporal. So these different parts of your brain, they perform different tasks. As I say, parietal, occipital in the back, like this. So why we have to do that? As I said, one factor was number of channels. I was discussing single channel. But for EEG, believe me, nowadays, they use 128 channels. 255 channel means a probe, 1 channel, 2 channel, 3 channel. So you can see a lot of channels. If you have a lot of channels, then one big challenge, how to reduce the number of channels. So there are two ways, just to, for your learning, from each channel, just recall my previous method. From each channel, ultimately, one channel, EEG data, you may do some sort of band division. From each band, you will be getting some data. From that data, you will be having some temporal variation of the feature. And from that, ultimately you fit it and you get a PDF, from where that PDF will give you mean and variance. That was the case. For one channel, from one band, you are getting 2 parameters. If you have 5 bands, then 10 parameters. Is it okay? Mean and variance. But for one channel, 10 parameters. 256 channels, you can understand. 2,560 parameters. So that's huge. That's why you have to find out some methods that can reduce the number of channels. In statistical analysis, if you give some data like this, so for channel 1, you have 10 parameters, channel 2, channel 3, so you have these parameters, 10 parameters, 10 parameters. So there are some statistical methods. I just said statistical methods. It's a math. So that math can reduce the number of channels. Principal component analysis, independent component analysis. Okay, so different analysis. So you give them, they'll reduce the number of channels. For example, to 10 cross 256 will be reduced to, what is 10? From one channel, 5 bands, each band 2 parameters. 10 parameters, okay? 10 parameters. How many channels? 256. 10 cross 256. You write a code PCA, printcom in MATLAB, that will give you 10 cross maybe 20. You understand? There are 256 columns. Now it is reduced to 20. 10 cross 20. Interesting things, now we have 20, but these 20 are completely different numbers. They have no relationship with those channel 1, channel 5, channel 20, no relationships. It's not like that out of those 256, you collected 5, 20, 27. Those 20 are not these 20. You understand? It's completely different values, 10, 20 different values. We call them projected values in a different space. We call them projected values in a different space. So, there is no relationship. That means which channels you are now giving me? I gave you 10 cross 256 channels. I asked you to reduce the number of channels. Why? With a view to reduce the feature space, feature dimension. Yes, you reduced. You gave me 10 cross 20. But this 20 doesn't have any physical meanings. You understand? So as far as no physical meaning, if I go from 20 to 25, 25 to 60, what you are actually doing? It's a math. No physical relationship. You understand? So that's why that work, what we are trying, I will give you exactly 20, but with an explanation. Okay, you want to differentiate this type of activities, for example, letter composition or visually thinking some pictures. Okay, you more concentrate on your occipital region. Why? Because all our pictures are composed in the backside, occipital region in the brain, where rods and cones, they are forming all pictures. So let's use these type of temporal things because you are not listening anything. So that again, it's possible to give you 20 channels, but these channels are very specific. I can tell you C1, C2, F1, F2, F4 frontal, C4 central, parietal P. So that's the thing you have to understand. That means this is also channel reduction with a physical interpretation. That is very, very tough in this area. But if you can do that, that means when you have 20, if I allow you to give me more 5, it will not be randomly 5. You decide, you judge which other channels should be given to you based on the activities of the brain. I told you earlier that some of the brain parts are more related to visual. Some of them are more related to pressure or pain. So depending on your task, which job you are performing, you can have a better channel selection algorithm. You understand? Why we need reduction? Simple, to reduce the complexity or to get better separability between two classes. Sometimes too much information not necessarily always good. Not always good. If I give too much information, then it is a very confusing because some information is positive for this class, negative for this class. Some information negative for this class, positive for this class. So you'll be very much confused what is going on. So as a result, channel reduction will give you better classification performance as well as reduce computational complexity. But that channel reduction has two approaches. One, you can proceed with statistical approaches, as I said, principal component analysis, independent component analysis, like that. Also, you can use your knowledge, expertise on your data. So that is the channel reduction. So we are working on that, how to reduce those channels. For example, instead of 256, recently we proposed only this 11 or 12 channels are okay, giving the same result instead of 256. But we have a lot of explanation on this. why we are taking a lot of medical papers. She is working on that. So this is one approach or application. This is called mental task. Different mental tasks you can say. Like computation, we call it arithmetic task. Doing some addition, multiplication. So during the addition, multiplication, how your brain is performing. Nowadays, it is also important for children growth to understand autism and those classes, to understand whether your brain can perform multiplication, addition, memorization properly or not. It depends, man to man. Okay. We were in one-dimensional signal. I gave you an expression of this muscle signal and then brain signal. One important area is cardiac signal. So different types of cardiac signals are there. The top one is most widely used, electrocardiogram, ECG, for your heart. So if you say why ECG is required, very simple. A lot of heart diseases are there. For example, MI, myocardial infarction, heart attack, what you call, or different type of myocardia. Apart from that, tachycardia, bradycardia, so atrial fibrillation, a lot of, we call it arrhythmia. Arrhythmias are there. So by looking at ECG, doctors, they can understand what's going on. So ECG is widely used, electrocardiogram. Recently, people are also working on PCG, phonocardiogram. What is that? So it's nothing but the stethoscope signal, sound, heart sound, lub, dub, the heart sound. But the interesting is this stethoscope nowadays is digital stethoscope. Have you seen digital stethoscope? Anybody? No. Nobody, I'm sure. Even the doctors, many doctors in the hospital. Why? It is very expensive. Sometimes they call it. But believe me, my students, I could have shown you, they have made a digital stethoscope only $10. Only $10. So the advantage is that for digital stethoscope, you just need some sort of piezoelectric. So the regular one, whatever is available in the market, they brought it and used that transducer there, and at the end they are just using audio jack. So they are plugging it to their cell phone, and easily you can see your heart, these PCG signals. So these PCG signals, interesting is that you can see the signal in your cell phone, very cheap, phonocardiogram. And we work a lot on that. And PPG, photoplethysmography, is very cheap. So it depends on IR sensors. 3 different IR sensors are required. You just have to plug in on your fingertip. So you can, depending on the oxygen level variation in your blood, you will have some signal which looks like that. All of them basically, they are measuring the heartbeats, pattern of heartbeats. So cardiac signal, pattern of heartbeats. So we have a lot of signal processing algorithms that we implemented on them. One major challenge was to get the heart rate from this PPG signal. It's very noisious. So you can see this PCG signal is very noisious. PPG signal, this one is fresh, but you'll see, if you see the longer version, they have also a lot of noises. So again, my objective was to tell you some sort of pattern recognition and signal processing. So here we are using extensively adaptive signal processing. That's an area, that's a major area I should say, adaptive signal processing. Any algorithm you know about adaptive signal processing? Anybody, any algorithm of adaptive signal processing? Yeah, adaptive facial linkment. There are some common algorithms, LMS, RLS, we call it least mean square algorithm, recursive least square algorithm. I don't want you to understand the algorithm at this moment. The idea is that this is adaptive. That means you have some sort of signal. You can see watch here. So the same signal you pass through a filter and try to adapt the filter coefficients. What is filter coefficients? If I tell you most general FIR filter, finite impulse response filter, like 1 plus B1 z to the power minus 1 plus B2 z to the power minus 2, like this. So this B1, B2, these are filter coefficients. The signal is coming, you pass it through a filter. So the similar thing, you will be getting some filter output and you will be getting some signal there. So always you have to do the error minimization. At the end of the day, one best example of adaptive signal processing is echo cancellation. For example, I am talking here. So if there is some echo, I mean, if this room is well designed. So echo means I am talking, it will be reflected back. So you'll be hearing my voice as well as the echo. In that case, what is desired? Echo means actually my voice delayed. So I have to need a canceller, echo canceller, that will generate the same delayed version and negatively cancel it out. It is possible. How? Because if you know the distance, because it is sound propagation principle, it will go there, reflect to there, so twice the distance it will cover, so the time you know. So at the same time you are recording my voice, but for you, you are getting two things, my voice and the echo. So what I will be doing, from my voice, I will be generating my echo here in the speaker here itself. And negatively, I will pass it there. So what will happen? My echo will be cancelled by here. He will be just listening to my voice. That is called echo cancelling. The principle is very simple. So echo will be cancelled. Very simple, echo will be cancelled just by generating my voice at a later position. But for this, one time if you perform, then you will see, no, the performance is not very good because you have to adapt all those coefficients. You need a lot of iterations. So after maybe 1,000 iterations, you will see whatever you are listening, there is no echo. Totally echo is vanished. So these are called adaptive signal processing. So the job is to identify a filter that will produce that type of echo. Eventually that will be cancelling out. The job is basically to find out that filter coefficients. How? Adaptive. At first, give all the values of the filter 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, filter parameters, B1, B2, B3. That's the rule. Then it will automatically generate something. There will be huge error. My voice and the echoed voice. My voice and the voice with echo. So at last, when echo will be cancelled, so you will see very nice voice is going. So this echo cancellation is then an important example of this adaptive filter, but we use it for denoising PPG signals noise. So this PPG signals nowadays, where it is using when we do exercise or even in the cell phone, they have the sensors like to capture accelerometer data. Accelerometer data. So even in your cell phone. So when you walk, they always monitor your accelerometer data. So some cell phone, they have this fitness software. So they use that accelerometer data. So similarly, when you are exercising on an exercising machine, walking machine, so your PPG data is coming. At the same time, as far as you are walking, that type of accelerometer noise data is coming. So in this case, the data which we are getting is not pure PPG. Because the application is when in the morning, people are doing some sort of jogging. So they will use a clip in their fingertip or here, fingertip, so that IR sensors. So he is jogging. In his cell phone, data will be recorded. So there should be a continuous monitoring of his heartbeat. You understand the objective? So that while he is running, there is no danger of death, no danger of cardiac attack. So people will like it because it may happen. For elderly people, every day he is walking, but the mental condition for every day is not same. So heart is, as I said, heart is run by your neuromuscular, heart pump, it's neuromuscular activity. So every day he is walking or running 40 minutes. It doesn't matter, like his mental condition, if it is not good, then at some day when he is running in the same fashion, there may be some severe heart disease, heart attack. It happens, many people it happens. He was running in the, say, any playground, he sat, he was telling, I'm feeling pain, then died. So this type of people will be very happy if you can give him, because cell phone is always there with them. So if they have something that can at least give some beep or alarm or send message to his family that that particular guy is now in danger. In that case, you need the heartbeat, heart pattern. So you cannot do the ECG at that time. Do you know how many leads required for ECG? At least 11, 12 leads are required. A lot of leads you have to insert to get the ECG. Then is it possible? While you are running, you will be getting the ECG? Impossible. That's why PPG is getting more popularity. But the problem is you are running. So the PPG signal, what I am getting, full of noise. So that's why those noises are directional noise. Try to understand. X, Y, Z, three direction. Because maybe you are doing exercise in this. Your finger is here. You can do in this way. These are coming all from practical application because people do like this. That means while you are doing in this direction, there is no vertical component. So that's why this accelerometer gives you three directional data. Every accelerometer gives three directional data, X, Y, Z. So those data actually we are getting. Apart from PPG, we are getting accelerometer data. So by using those accelerometer data, actually we are denoising the original acquired PPG data. So that's why in our, you can read last 2 years, some recent journal papers on this PPG. There you will see that we canceled our Z-axis, Y-channel, X-channel data by using some adaptive filter algorithm, as I said, RLS, recursive least square. You will not understand RLS at this moment. This is an adaptive signal processing block. But I am giving you the flavor that you may have to work with 3 dimensions. You see, it's a 3-dimensional data, X, Y, Z. And I am just cancelling the noise in X channel, Y channel, Z channel. Because my data are like that. Okay, so this is PPG. And as I said, I will be giving you an example of image data, 2-dimensional. So some people, they are just telling that, oh, it's very complicated because it's an image. But for me, it's same. Because if you understand, the same concept you can apply in images. For example, retinal image, we work on retinal image. For diabetic patients, they call it diabetic retinopathy. It's an important disease where these, you can see the picture, glaucoma or different diseases. In that case, what happens, these veins, all these veins, they may be narrowed down or disconnected, disjoint. So looking at those path of these veins, you have to say whether the patient has diabetic retinopathy or not. That's our job. So for this image, we have to process and finally deliver like this. And if you want to understand all these steps, yes, obviously you have to know some sort of image processing background. For example, here we have done, so this is the original image. So we have done some median filtering. But there are codes in MATLAB, built-in codes. Median filter. What is that? If I say average filtering, if I give you 5 points, if I give you 3 cross 3, a box, 3 cross 3, and I ask you to do average filtering, what does it mean? 3 cross 3, 9 pixels, they'll have some values, replace all of them by the average values. So 9 values all will be the average. That is called average filtering. So now you understand what is median filtering. You can do that. So these simple steps if you do, then you can do the median filtering. The output will be like that. You can do light reflex removal, top hat transform. These are some morphological operations. There are more or less 17 morphological operations. Erosion, dilation. I don't want to go all details. So these will enhance the quality of images. That's called morphological operation. So at the end of the day, we are getting this sort of thing. After pre-processing, this is my output. Now what is your job? A lot of diseased patients, you have to find out this. Lot of normal patients, you have to find this. You have to label, then pass it to machine. So machine will train and finally tell you, okay, on the test phase, you give an image after pre-processing and extracting these lines. This is called segmentation. You give so in the test phase, it will say, okay, fine, disease or not disease. So in the same way, I can give you another example of this endoscopy image, because we have done so far extensively on endoscopy image last 5 years. We'll be getting maybe 6-7 journal papers on this. So if you read them, these endoscopy images, so this one is interesting for me because this image, endoscopy image, deals with gastrointestinal tract. So gastrointestinal tract. So the disease is inside the tube. Disease is inside the tube here. So how to see that? One possibility, you insert a camera, but that will not reach, because right after this place is very complicated. That will not reach there. So you see, you cannot reach there. So if your cancer, polyp, tumor is inside the tube, what will happen? How to treat? Even how to know that there is a cancer going on, there's a tumor. So in that case, what people are doing, they're using a capsule camera. So this camera, they are very nice. So this camera, that will, if you swallow the camera, it will continuously take pictures and wirelessly send it there. Okay? So you will be having a device at your here. So it will go, it will pass, and continuously this device can get those pictures. So once you get these pictures, then you can transmit your PC and can process and see whether you have this cancer or not. But the problem is, if you swallow, it will start going in this way. And do you have idea how many hours it will take to complete the whole path? How many hours? Huh? 16. 16 hours is too long. Less. So 2 to 4 hours or like that. So some people say maximum 8 hours. So you need this time. But okay, what's the problem? You just send it and record it. It's not a big deal. 8 hours or 10 hours, fine. But what's the problem here? So you have the recorded data set. What next? So somebody will have to watch every single frame and see where is the cancer. Because cancer is not everywhere, only one place. You understand? Is it possible? 8 hours by looking every sample? Is it possible? So you will be sleepy. It's not possible. So that's the thing people are doing now. Everywhere. This is still not automated. This is manually people are doing in this way. So that's why in this area you need some automatic disease detection. You understand? That means machine will, you give the 8 hours data, machine will process and tell you some important segments. Now it's okay for doctor. Okay, show me the problematic zones. Within 5 minutes you can see all the problematic zones. That means from 8 hours you have to reduce to 5 minutes. Who will do that? That machine will do that. So your task is, given these images, you have to identify critical images where there is a possibility of different tumor, cancer, etc. You understand? This is the job which you are dealing with, capsule endoscopy. You can see the pictures, problematic, TB or bleeding. So you can see bleeding and non-bleeding. So E and F, this is non-bleeding. Why I am showing it? This is bleeding. This is non-bleeding. But for machine, they are very similar. Sometimes this is very problem. Bleeding doesn't mean this will be very red. Not necessarily. Internal bleeding will not cause you a complete dark red. Some sort of red will be there. So in this case, what we are doing some activities, you give me this, I will be processing, I will be having this one. So one new thing what we propose, instead of now working with the whole image, you can select the region of interest. So the region of interest based on some simple threshold criteria. So this R and G, color pictures, they have their red and green pixel intensities. So if you say the pixel intensity is greater than this, which pixels? You mark them red. Pixel intensity is less than that, you mark them with a color. So in this way, you can easily select some pixels of your interest, because your interest may be red pixels are your interest. The pixel with a red intensity higher than this, green intensity lower than this, blue intensity lower than this, that is of your interest. You can easily select that by simple thresholding criteria, and from here you can easily get this selected. You see, black means unselected, blue, this red means selected. So why I'm telling this? This is called region selection criteria. So if you select a particular region, then your processing time will be reduced. You can onward work only with those selected areas rather than all areas. So as time is almost end, so I don't want to give you much detail about those things. Just to say, the processing what we do for these images, for image processing, generally we use block by block. 5 cross 5, 25 cross 25, the same thing. Previously I said frame number versus feature variational pattern. Now your feature is coming from 5 cross 5 block. Of that, you can do that. Feature variational pattern, you can also do the histogram with that. Previously I showed one dimensional, you can also do it 2 dimensional. And also you can fit by some probability density function. So this is our final result actually, what we are giving, what we are obtaining. Now we are dealing with different 4 class problems. So again, you can fit this histogram. That's why if you later read these slides, you will understand the same process, only now 2 dimensional. I just keep those things which are relevant to you. So this is video, and finally this is MRI, 3-dimensional. So in this case, we have to identify the volume. No more image. My students, they are working and they are giving volume data. You understand? That means, so far we have done very good work. One work is almost accepted in a transaction paper. So this case, we are working slice by slice. That is called image level operation of video volumetric data. Also, we are working with the volume data. Just now I have said, if you want to process an image, if you want to extract features from image, how to extract features from an image? 5 cross 5 pixel intensities, I told you just now. But for volume, it's not 5 cross 5. It's 5 cross 5 cross 5. It's not pixel. We call it voxel. Volume, voxel. So you have to 5 cross 5 cross, it's like a cube. So everything you have to do the filtering operation on volume. We work on star shape filter. It's like you can imagine, you can feel. We propose this is a star shape filter. The filter which has a lot, it's not like exactly star, but it's like it has a center and it has a lot of like hands. That I can change the dimension. That's I'm proposing star shape filtering. So the idea here, you can work slice by slice, just like image, or you can work with the volume. The job here is to whether you have tumor or not tumor. So these are slice by slice few things we are giving here. So maybe later, sometimes if I get time, I will be explaining, because we have no time at this moment. So another important and very critical thing, this is for MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. That means you have to lie down. You may have seen a machine operating based on electromagnetic principle, and that will give you some images, volumes. It's volumes. But the problem is, see, not one. They have 4 different types: Clear, T1, T1C, and T2. 4 different types. One volume has 128 slides, some of them 156 slides. Then you can imagine the vastness of data. Huge volumetric data. Not one image. This one T1 is 128 slices. You can move this side, you can move this side, you can move this side. You have to understand. 120, this type of slices. If you move here, you will be getting a lot of slices. You can move also from top to in front, a lot of slices. So similar operations, you have to perform 3-dimensional and then take the decision of one particular pixel. That's the huge task. So this is, our star-shaped filter, what we have proposed recently for the purpose of filtering. So we propose this length and doing the operation. And we are adaptively varying this length to find out that. So that's the conclusion. So what we have said, like we have dealt with different types of biosignals, 1D, 2D, or 3D. The process more or less same. You have to extract features, and you have to be smart in extracting features. You can do the holistic approach, the whole thing, or you can extract features with some regions. You may have to process in the directly signal domain, but I prefer to work on transform domain. You can do the transformation, conventional, wavelet transform, EMD transform. Also, you can do the feature variational pattern, and then you can extract features and can perform the different classes, different types of classification. So that can be very helpful for different types of